Hello and welcome to Autoportal.com, the car buying website that helps you buy better. Well, the entry compact SUV segment really has been the place where all the action has taken place in the last 1 year or so, and these two cars really are the top dogs in this segment. But which one is the king of it? Well, we'll find out on the show today. Well, both these cars have now been in the Indian market for well over a year. While the Duster is clearly bigger on the outside, it does look very boxy and squarish, but that is part of its appeal. The big grille up front, those square lamps, and that macho styling really is very appealing to a lot of SUV buyers. The EcoSport on the other end is much more compact on the outside, but still manages to look sophisticated and posh. And Ford is clearly aiming at the urban youngsters of India with this car. Well, the EcoSport's boot is pretty decent in its own right, and it's a very well-shaped boot. It's very square-shaped, and because it is a tall car, you can really load it all the way to the roof. And if you want to increase the capacity even more, you can of course flip the rear seats down, and that really aids practicality and storage capacity of this car. Other plus point is that there's no loading lip at all, so when you are heaving in that heavy luggage, you really don't have to put your back into it. On the downside though, it isn't as big as the Duster, clearly a size down on that car. Well, the other negative is that because the door opens sideways, if you are parked in a very tight slot and someone is right behind you, then opening this boot can be a bit tricky, and loading heavy luggage will be a bit of an issue if you are of course in a tight parking spot. Well, let's have a look at the boot of the Duster now. Well, as you can see, it's a very nice boot. It's really square shaped, and the loading area is very big on this car, so the Duster has the clear edge on the EcoSport when it comes to boot capacity. Well, the only small negative on the Duster's boot is the fact that because it is such a high car, it's such a tall car, you'll have to put in luggage by heaving it. You can't just slide it around, and sliding it can be a bit of an issue because you have this little lip over here, so you will have to put your back into the loading of the Duster, and that's the only small negative. Otherwise, it really has the number of the EcoSport when it comes to boot capacity. But here I am in the front row of the EcoSport now, and the biggest strength of this car is the seats. They're very, very comfortable. They offer you very good cushioning and excellent bolstering on the sides as well, and that really means that long distance trips in this car will not really be tiresome at all. Well, this cabin really is very high on style. It really feels like a very funky place to be in, and even though some of the controls on the center console look a little confusing, once you get the hang of it, it's a very intuitive and easy to operate cabin. The other plus point of this cabin is that it's very practical. The door bins can genuinely house those big 1 liter bottles at, and there's plenty of place around the cabin to keep your favorite cold drink. There's a lot of space over here to keep your wallet as well as your cell phone also. The only downside is that the quality of materials is slightly just one step below the Renault Duster and some of its other rivals, and the AC controls and things like that don't really have that same tactile feel which the Duster offers. Well, so here I am in the second row of the Ford EcoSport seats, and I've adjusted the front seat for my height and my driving position, and for reference I am 5'10", and I've still got good amount of knee room, and I can also stretch my legs below the front seats. And it's a wide car. It's a pretty wide car. It's not as wide as the Duster is, but still wide enough to house 3 passengers at the back, and there's very minimal intrusion from that transmission tunnel, and so whoever is sitting here has got place to stretch his feet at, and of course you can also keep your feet under the front seats. The other plus point on the EcoSport is that it's a very practical place to be, even in the rear seats, unlike the Duster, which doesn't offer too many cubby holes to keep your knickknacks in. And you can generally house a big bottle in the door bins over here, and there's also place right over here to keep your wallet and your cell phone at. So much better in terms of rear seat knee room as well as practicality. Well, so here I am inside the front seats of the Renault Duster, and what's immediately visible is that quality is definitely ahead of the EcoSport. Everything feels much more solid and much more better in terms of quality, and this black and beige combination really does give this cabin a sense of airiness and a sense of roominess. And of course it is a much more wider car, so you do feel that you are in a bigger car. Well, that said, this dashboard definitely feels much more older in terms of design. It looks like an outdated dashboard. It looks like a car from the early 2000s compared to the EcoSport, which really does have a lot of funk and a lot of style about its cabin. Well, in terms of practicality, it's a bit of a mixed bag, because even though the door bins are not very deep to keep those big 1 liter bottles at, you do get a place over here where you can keep that bottle, and there's also a big tray over here right above the AC vents where you can put your wallets and your cell phones at. The other downside is that if you have to adjust the mirrors, the outside mirrors, you have to adjust them by using this button over here, which should have been right here on the door pad. So that's a bit of a downside. Well, so here I am in the back seat of the Renault Duster now. In terms of headroom, it's really generous. But where the Duster feels a little bit of a letdown is legroom. I mean, the knee room isn't really great considering it is a much bigger car than the EcoSport on the outside. I was expecting a lot more knee room and a lot more legroom really. And I've adjusted the front seat for my height, which for reference is 5'10". And as you can see, not enough knee room really. But on the plus side, it's generally a wide car. It's a much wider car than the EcoSport, so you can sit three over here. But this AC vent and this raised transmission tunnel can be a bit of an issue because as I'll show you, you'll have to really stretch your legs out, and there'll be a bit of a fight with whoever's sitting on these two sides for leg space. And even though it is a genuine 3-seat at the back, it's a little tight for legroom. Well, the other downside on the Renault Duster, apart from limited knee room, is the fact that it's not very practical to be at the back. There are no door pockets at the back, and even the EcoSport offers big door bins and big door pockets at the back where you can generally house those big 1-litre bottles. So that's a bit of a letdown. So the back seat of this competition goes to the EcoSport. Well, here I am driving the Duster now, and I'm driving the diesel version of the car. It comes with a 1.5-litre diesel engine, and this engine comes in two states of tune. There's an 85 bhp as well as 110 bhp. Now this, of course, is the 110 bhp version of the car. And what really impresses you instantly is the fact that it's a very responsive diesel engine, unlike most other cars where you have to wait for the turbo to start spooling in, and you have to wait for that 2000 rpm mark to get things in motion. This car feels lively from around 1600 rpm, and that really makes it a very easy car to maneuver around town traffic. Well, the other plus point about the Duster is that it comes with very high set seats and a huge glass area and a very long bonnet, and that means is that it really does feel like a proper SUV. And like the EcoSport, which feels more like a hatchback on stilts, this car really does feel like you are driving a big and macho SUV on the road. Well, the other good point about the Duster is that it has a very, very good suspension. It's a very comfortable suspension, and it really does manage to soak in the bumps really well. So it might be small potholes in the city or even the bigger ones when you are on the highway. This car really does manage to soak in those bumps very well and gives you a very, very corsetting and pliant ride. Well, the only small downside of the Duster is that it's a very big car, and that means that sometimes maneuverability can be a bit of an issue in the city. Unlike the EcoSport, which you can park into tight spaces, this one, well, it's a little difficult, and it can be a little cumbersome, especially when you are taking those roundabouts in the city or negotiating a tight corner. Well, the Duster comes with this 6-speed manual gearbox, and what that really means is that it's one of the few cars which offers a 6-speed unit in the SUV segment at this price point. And it's a decent gearbox. It's nothing really exceptional, but it'll get the job done. Well, so here I am driving the Ford EcoSport now. This, of course, is the diesel version. It comes with a 1.5-litre diesel which develops about 90 bhp of power. Well, this car feels instantly more nimble than the Duster, and that's because the steering is much lighter, the clutch is lighter, and the gearbox is much more slick than the one on the Duster, and that really makes the EcoSport a very, very friendly car to drive around town. Well, what also impresses is the fact that it's a very responsive engine. Just like the Duster's engine, this one starts responding to driver inputs from roughly about 1500, 1600 rpm, and that, along with its very refined nature, makes it one of the better cars, or the better compact SUVs in fact, to drive around yourself. Well, where the EcoSport has a clear edge over the Duster is in the fact that it's a more friendly car to drive, and it's also a better car for driver involvement. The chassis feels much more agile than the Dusters, and it really does respond well to quick lane changes. If you are a keen driver, if you enjoy throwing your car around corners, around the hilly sections, then this is the car which you will enjoy driving in. Well, in terms of ride comfort, both these cars are more or less matched, but the EcoSport does have a slightly harsh edge to the ride at slower city speeds. On the highway, it's very stable, and it really does take the sting out of the worst roads, even when you are doing good speeds. Well, even though the Duster might be bigger on the outside, have more cabin space and a much bigger boot, the EcoSport offers you ease of driving and is pretty big for most families' needs on a day-to-day basis. The Ford will also offer you low running costs, and Ford's after-sales network is really hassle-free and offers a lot of peace of mind, making this the winner of our comparison today.